Um, okay. I am Browne, and I am a wedding and elopement photographer here in Southeast Texas. If you are noticing an accent, it's because I'm a born and raised Michigander. Um, so I say A and you guys a lot. um, so I'm going to talk today about how to have an all-day elopement. But before I kind of dig into how to do that, I'm going to talk about what elopements are and some myths. I do have a pretty extensive blog post on this on my website, so I will post that in the event discussion. So if you want to pop over and look at it, you can get more information. But so we're just going to kind of start here. I kind of refer to elopements as basically the turd in the proverbial punch bowl of weddings. They still kind of elicit strange and offensive reactions from maybe some people that are in the older generations that don't really understand that they're a different beast now. So millennials and Gen Z have just like completely threw the old definitions out the window, and they are forging ahead with a new definition of what elopements actually are. And they're basically just a variety of untraditional kinds of wedding days. And fun fact, keep this in mind as we're moving forward here. The word elope actually is adapted from the Anglo-French word eloper, which literally means to escape captivity, which with elopements, we're kind of like escaping the cookie cutter box of traditional weddings that people are kind of getting over now. So, what is a modern elopement? Well, an elopement is a wedding day experience where the sole focus of the day is on the couple. And you might be thinking, but that's what a wedding day is. Yes, but also no. And anyone who's in the event industry who works with couples on the wedding day, I've personally heard from several of my own couples that said, it's not about us, it's just a show for everyone else. And when I hear things like that, it breaks my heart because a wedding day should be, it should fulfill you, not exhaust you. So with a traditional wedding, the majority of the couple's focus and their budget is all on their guest experience rather than on themselves. Whereas with an elopement, the couple's focus is on themselves and planning the day that they want. And if they decide to have some guests, those people are just along for the ride. So they're planning what they want to do and then saying, if you want to come with us, feel free, but this is what we're doing. And we'll talk about having guests at an elopement in a minute. So elopement basically means running away from tradition for just the sake of tradition, running away from things that might be expected, but they don't really have any meaning to you, running away from obligations and waste. And you're just running to something that actually feels more like who you are and actually brings you comfort and makes you feel joyful rather than drained. So I do want to be clear, I love elopements, but I also love big weddings. So this is not to bash big weddings, not at all. To me, the important thing, like as I'm serving a couple, is that they are doing what makes them feel comfortable, what excites them the most, what is fulfilling to them, what brings them joy. So if you're, if you're looking out, you just got engaged and you're trying to plan a wedding, like maybe you went into planning a wedding just assuming, well, weddings are 120 guests and you rent a venue and you do all these things. But if that feels like overwhelming, it doesn't feel like you, then you might want to consider doing an elopement. Okay, so we're going to jump into some elopement myths. I do have 12 elopement myths listed out on my website. We're only going to cover like the 5 big ones because these are the ones that kind of bring up the most apprehension. Like, oh, I don't know if I can do that because I believe these things about elopements. We're going to bust those big ones right now. And I actually did like legitimate research here. I surveyed over 150 couples that eloped within the last 5 years, and this was before COVID. So this is not including COVID elopements. So over 150 couples, and I asked them a bajillion questions. So these are like there's legitimate information here. So the first myth is elopements aren't as special as real weddings. Well, first of all, an elopement is a real wedding because at the end of the day, the 2 people that wanted to get married did. So it was a real wedding. What people generally mean when they say a real wedding is a traditional large-scale wedding with 100 guests, a ceremony, a reception, and an event venue with food and a DJ. That's that's kind of like the accepted definition of what a real wedding is. But is it still a wedding if you only have 50 guests? Is it still a wedding if you don't do a bouquet toss? Or if the reception is Sunday brunch instead of Saturday night dinner? Or if you have a caricature artist for entertainment instead of a DJ? Are those things weddings? I think they are. So what society and kind of like big bridal industry is getting at is that what makes something a wedding is that there's guests and a party with entertainment. That's what we've defined as a wedding. What I'm saying is those are examples of other types of weddings that are special, just like an elopement is a type of wedding that is also special. So that's the first myth. Elopements are in fact as special as other kinds of weddings. The second one is that elopements are planned at the last minute. Now, for some people, that's true. Shout out to my military friends because the struggle is real. But per my survey, over 60% of the respondents took 3 or more months to plan their elopement. And nearly 25% took a year or more. So these are typically not, it's Tuesday, let's go get married on Saturday type of things. Usually people they're sitting down and they're really thinking about what they want to do. They're being really intentional about how they want to spend their time together and the experiences they want to have. They're often like planning to travel to a favorite location or, someplace that's on their bucket list. They're, putting a lot of care and consideration into planning their elopement, just like traditional wedding couples are putting a lot of care and consideration into how they're planning their wedding day. So don't think, if you got engaged now, planning an elopement for 2022 is totally legitimate. People are doing that. The next myth is elopements are just a ceremony and some portraits. Now, I'm getting on my soapbox here. I love my wedding photography industry. I'm like so just at awe at some of my fellow photographers. But photographers that are like truly dedicated to elopements are different. 90% of photographers out there offering elopement photography have like 2-hour packages. And it's so prevalent that for a lot of people that are actually thinking seriously about eloping, they feel like it's the only option. Like, if I want to elope, then my day is only worth 2 hours. The wedding industry backs that up. They've basically assumed something about modern eloping couples that is not true, or it's no longer true. They kind of approach it as, if you get rid of the reception, then we're cutting everything across the board, rather than, like, if you get rid of the reception, they assume that you want to just cut the celebration out completely, rather than just like replacing it with some other kind of celebration. And because there's also a myth about couples only eloping to save money, that kind of like perpetuates it. And we will talk about that myth in a moment. But most photographers just assume that wedding or elopement couples wouldn't choose to have all day coverage, a full 8-hour day coverage like their traditional wedding counterparts. So they just kind of believe that if you want to cut out certain traditional wedding day services, that means you want to do it across the board. But there's still 24 hours in that day. That's the day you're getting married. There's still 24 hours for you to have experiences and celebrate with each other. Just because you didn't want to spend $30,000 on a reception shouldn't mean you're relegated to 2 hours of celebration with like a nice photo at the park. That's sad. You deserve to celebrate all day and have hundreds of beautiful photos of you doing all of the things that you do on your wedding day. And so that kind of brings us into imagining what you would want to do, because you can literally do anything. Of course, you have to have a ceremony. You have to like legally get married, but like after that, you can celebrate however you want. So you can have new experiences, you can have luxurious splurges, you can go on crazy adventures. There's literally no limit. You can go anywhere, do anything. So just keep that in mind, because at the end of this, we're going to talk about some crazy, awesome things you can do to celebrate after your ceremony. The next myth is that you cannot have guests. Well, it's 2021 and actually you can. In the past, couples wanted to elope, like they kind of scrapped the idea because they felt like they didn't want a big wedding, but they also couldn't imagine getting married without like their parents or their siblings or their best friend there. And so they kind of just, went the traditional route, but that's all different now, and you can have guests. The elopement industry doesn't really have an agreed upon like guest number maximum, but generally the top end maxes out at 20 guests. Personally, I classify an elopement as having 14 or fewer guests. There's some, photographers and videographers out there that say 4. So you'll just, if you do decide to go this route, you'll want to take note and check with your vendors to see if they have like a maximum limit on their guests, on your, guest count. And the reason that there are those ranges is just because each individual vendor is kind of determining based on their own experience, like, okay, after this many guests, the day kind of turns away from focusing on a couple to focusing on the guest experience, so that they've set their numbers according to what they feel is kind of still focusing on the couple. The key is that this is really about you planning a day for yourselves exactly as you've dreamed it, and extending an invitation to your guests to witness it without compromising any of the details. So some couples will only fulfill their witness requirements. So sometimes those can actually be filled by your vendors if they're willing, you know, like your photographer, videographer, your officiant. And there's actually some places in the United States that you can get married with no witnesses and no officiant. So you can literally decide, the two of you, to go off somewhere, like the top of the mountain, a beach, the drive-through at McDonald's, and say your vows and marry each other. So that's called self-solemnization or self-uniting marriage. It is legally recognized in Colorado, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Washington, D.C. You still sign and file a marriage license, but those locations just recognize you as your own officiant. So that's an option. It's not possible in Texas. You have to have a witness in Texas, but if you are like, yeah, I kind of just want to go off with my future spouse and say vows and not have anybody there to see it, you can do that in Colorado, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Washington, D.C. Sorry, guys, I got to adjust here real quick. Okay, the last myth we're going to talk about is the main reason that couples elope is to save money. Even I was surprised by the results of my own survey. This is wildly false. In fact, only 11% of the people that responded said they eloped specifically to save money. Everybody else said it was just a positive side effect. So the actual number one reason that people said that they decided to elope was because it felt more authentic to who they are. And that was 83% of the people that responded checked that as their number one reason for eloping. The number two reason was so the day would center around their relationship. That was 81% of respondents. And the third top reason for eloping was because we value experiences over all the stuff you need for a traditional wedding. So this myth that, you know, the big reason that couples are eloping is just because they want to save money is wildly false. It's so much more emotional than the money. Because the focus with elopements is on the couple rather than the guests, what they're choosing to invest in any aspect of their day boils down to the value it will bring them. Yes, you're right. Yep, Natalie, it's about adventure and intimacy. And I know, I love that, especially if that's what makes you feel comfortable, because that's gonna come out in the way that you express yourself on your wedding day. So it's, you know, when couples worry about their own experience first, the guest experience becomes secondary and kind of just a way to enhance the day, if, you know, should they decide to have guests. Okay, so you can have guests, you might save some money. You can have an all-day celebration. So what do? Well, for a lot of couples, part of their day is going to look pretty similar to a traditional wedding day. You still have to get ready. You might want to do a first look. You'll probably take some, you know, nice formal photos together. If your family is present, you'll probably take some formal photos with them. You're going to have your ceremony. The only thing that's really different is what you do after, like how you celebrate the rest of the day. Now, you know, after your ceremony, it's kind of a choose your own adventure. So just taking into consideration our area, Southeast Texas, especially right now, because I know a lot of people are apprehensive about traveling, at least traveling by, airplane. Things that you could do locally are you could have a picnic in the park. There's actually companies out there, they'll bring out like tables and blankets and pillows and like put like, florals on these little tables, and it basically looks like a wedding table, but they'll set it up for you, in a park or in your backyard or at your Airbnb or wherever, and bring in catering and all of that for you. So you can do that. You could go to, you could rent an Airbnb and have a private caterer come in, especially if you have guests, or even if you decide it's just going to be the two of you. When else are you going to get a private caterer to come make you, a 5-course meal or whatever? You can go to Chemo Boardwalk or Pleasure Pier, go on some rides, play some games, go on a hot air balloon ride. That's a thing here. Take a ghost tour. You can do those in Galveston. It's kind of quirky and fun, depending on the couple. You could go skydiving. You could charter a yacht, go out on the ocean. You could actually do that for your ceremony too. Go play mini golf, go on a hike. We've got Brazos Bend State Park and Galveston Island State Park. They have lots of really great trails with like, beautiful scenery. So you can get some like really amazing photos while you're on a hike, especially if you're a nature lover. You do a helicopter tour, go swimming or stand up paddleboarding. If you're like, okay, we put the nice clothes on, we did the ceremony, we got the pictures, I want to, just married bathing suits and go swimming. If you decided to head out, towards like Austin Way, you could float the river. I actually saw a really cute photo on, some website, and the couple had like those inner tubes, and one of them said just and the other one said married. So you could do that. When things start to open back up a little, you can think about doing things like a pub crawl. There's like actual like pub crawl tours you can sign up for. And those are great too. If you have like a small number of guests, you can like all go with your guests and do a little pub crawl. You could get tickets to a comedy show, a ballet, a play, a concert. So those are all things that you could do locally, and that's just like half the list that I have. Like if you want to book an elopement with me, I will give you a list that will make your head spin. Now, when things start to open up fully, so if you're looking at 2022 or later to like plan your elopement, a lot of couples are traveling internationally. New Zealand is a really popular place to go have, an elopement. You can like charter a helicopter, it'll drop you off on the top of a mountain. You can say your vows and have a picnic and do the champagne bottle and go on a hike and all that stuff. And then the helicopter will pick you up and take you back to your hotel or whatever. Alaska is popular, Colorado is popular, Florida is very popular. You can do an elopement at Disney World, just putting that out there as I'm wearing my Stitch sweatshirt. I would be happy to photograph your elopement at Disney. Cruises are really popular. Those will be coming back eventually. Always wanted to take that romantic vacation to Paris. You could go there and get married and have your honeymoon and do the whole, have the whole experience. The whole thing with an elopement is there's no rules. You really can just sit down with a piece of paper and think about, what would your dream day look like? You could rent the suite at a fancy hotel downtown, because when is there going to be another occasion where you just feel like that's a good idea? Anything that you can think of that you've ever wanted to do, especially that you've wanted to do together, if it feels crazy or too expensive to do just because, this could be the day that you do it. So it's really just your imagination is the limit. So you can do it on a weekday, on a weekend. There's a lot of people that actually will get married at sunrise. So they'll get up and they'll hike for an hour and they'll get married on a mountain in Colorado at sunrise. And then they'll spend the rest of the day like hiking and four-wheeling and eating s'mores by the fire. There's literally no template. You make the template. So if anybody has any questions, I could talk about this for hours. But yeah, I'm here if anybody has any questions at all. I will post the link to my myths blog post in the event, and you can shoot me an email, just let me know. Do I prefer a planner for elopements too? Elopement, a lot of my respondents to my survey did hire a planner. It was like 40%. So people are doing that, especially if they're getting married somewhere where they don't live, just for like logistics. And because a planner will have access to a really great florist, a really great hair and makeup artist, an efficient photographer, videographer. So yeah, that's the thing. Elopement planners. A lot of wedding planners are noticing that people want this now, and they're also including packages. So that's something to look out for. But if you don't want to hire a planner, most photographers that do elopements seriously, like the ones that offer full day elopement coverage like myself, we can help you plan it as part of the service.
Awesome. I have so many regrets about not doing a pub crawl wedding. Like, what was I just thinking? So cool. I'm gonna need to go through your list of like crazy elopement ideas, because I feel like my crazy brides plus 2021 equals like, that's probably like good math.
I love that that's the one that stood out to you.
Yeah.
A pub crawl.
Well, listen, I'm not hiking anywhere at sunrise. Like, let's be real. I'm